So how all this started is that I was asked to be a speaker at IMTS. I was asked to be a speaker at AMT's annual meeting. And in order to get smart about it, they sent me to IMTS, John Bird with Paul Warndorf, to get smart and give a talk, just a general talk about open systems at AMT's annual meeting, Lake Las Vegas 2006. So I spent 3 days walking around with Paul Warndorf, and after that, John Bird said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, you guys are basically 21 years behind the computer industry. And so what it reminded me of, back in the computer, back in 1985, is that the most popular network was SneakerNet. You had to carry around this floppy from one system to another because you're either in the Novell shop, and token ring shop, and Ethernet shop, just everything under the sun. And it was difficult, very, very difficult to just share information. So John asked, well, what do you recommend? And I said, well, two things. First, you need some type of economic wake-up call on the importance of standards. I say, clearly manufacturing doesn't believe in having an open way to share information. As Red Heidkamp likes to say, everyone has this I have a secret type mentality. So I said, I can certainly do that. I can give an economic wake-up call. And the other thing I said is the most important thing, you need to have somebody that's really led a revolution. But I said that the answer to this problem is not hard. We've already seen the problem before in the computer industry. And that is, everything needs to be built upon easy to get to information, easy to understand information. So the other part was, I said, well, you guys, you really need some type of moonshot, somebody that's led a few revolutions. And I said, I'm not the guy for that. I've not led any revolutions. But I happen to know people that have. And the best person I know is Dr. David Patterson at Berkeley. And he was Sun's first consultant. Bill Joy, who was one of Sun's founders, was getting his PhD at Berkeley, and Dave Patterson was his mentor, was the professor there. So Dave Patterson has been involved with numerous technologies, from RAID, redundant array of inexpensive disk, that everyone uses today, RISC computing, which is how processors are designed. He's been responsible for just countless startups, and literally billion-dollar businesses have come out of his students and his ideas. So I sent him a note, asked if we would work together, and when it was described that this is important for manufacturing, especially in the United States, Dave agreed to do it, and we worked together. And as getting prepared for that, in September of that year, I was at the Pentagon with my parents. They were having this dedication. And so I walked up to the team that was doing the Joint Strike Fighter, and you see there being members like Lockheed, Rolls-Royce, BAE, I forget some of the others, but that's honest to God, that's not a mock-up, that was a real Joint Strike Fighter. And I asked them a simple question, what was the biggest challenge you had in the design of the Joint Strike Fighter? Because I saw these important people stand there and no one's talking to them, so I'll walk up and talk to anybody. So when I asked them the question, they came back and said the biggest problem we had was just the interoperability of data. They had to go and tell everyone of their team members, you have to use this software on this computer at this patch level, and everything had to be the exact same hardware and software. And they hated it because people wanted to use their own. But since they couldn't share data and couldn't reliably exchange data, that's what they had to do for the Joint Strike Fighter. Now, with MTConnect, there's an analogy here where you had these different machine tools all speaking a different language. And it's really a connectivity integration nightmare, trying to get all of these systems to really work together when they're all speaking a different language. Now, one of the questions get is, well, why should people care about a protocol? A protocol just connects two things. Well, if you're a plant manager, the reason why you should care is that if you can't easily network your manufacturing equipment together to get information, then in my opinion, you're managing in the dark. You don't have data. And what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. And this is it's a fundamental step to being more productive. So how about if you're an equipment provider? Why should you care? Well, shop owners and plant managers, they hate this stuff, where it's so hard just to get information. And so you should think about it from the customer's perspective. And also, and we're going to have a panel later today talk about how to make money and save time with MTConnect, and you'll hear people talk about from their perspective as like a machine tool builder, for example, or software provider. Why do they care? And it's not just because customers are asking for it, because it can actually save them time and money. So how about software application vendors? Well, if you think about it, imagine that you're a software developer, and what you want to do is write a monitoring program. And you want to talk, obviously, to all the equipment that's out there. Well, now you have to worry about having all of these proprietary drivers to get all of this information. And then after you write all these proprietary drivers, then you can start making business decisions with it. Well, yes, there's a few companies out there that make money from selling all these proprietary drivers, but that falls in the who cares category of life. I mean, just getting a connection, end users don't care about that. They expect that. What end users want is information to help them be more productive. They don't care about the pipe. And so that's what MTConnect is. It makes it easy to get that. And I'll share some more examples here. So this is something that you guys are all very well familiar with, much more than I am. But back in 2005, NIST said that data incompatibility costs manufacturing multi-billion-dollar losses annually. Machine tools only spend a quarter of their time in cycle. Talking to people like Rick Caldwell, 4 to 5%. He goes, Dave, that's probably high. Truthfully, it's maybe like 2 to 3% that's being monitored today, as opposed to like Google. You heard Mike Gelner say 100% of computers and data centers are monitored, and that continues to blow me away. Is how can you possibly manage something that you don't have data? Well, the holy grail of manufacturing is art to part, first time correct. Well, this is absolutely impossible if you can't integrate, you can't easily get data. Now, the previous attempts were what I like to call the country club approach. My parents are big golfers, where you got to pay a lot of money to join, you got to pay every time out, and that's not how you really make a big dent in the universe. And so when I suggested MTConnect, I said it had to be open source, had to be free to join, free to deploy. Members can do whatever they want after that, but we have to make it easy to get MTConnect out to members. And if they want to roll it in, or if they want to charge for it, that's fine. But we have to make it just as lower the bar as low as possible. So one of the challenges with MTConnect is explain, well, what is a protocol? And a protocol is simply how devices speak to each other. And I realize that that's sort of a metaphysical type of way of describing something. So let me try to be a little more precise. So have you ever gone into Best Buy and asked the salesperson there, can you point me at the Bluetooth aisle? Or can you point me at the USB aisle? I mean, they would laugh at you, right? I mean, you don't just buy Bluetooth just by itself, and you wouldn't ask for Bluetooth by itself. Well, what does Bluetooth do, for example? Well, what Bluetooth does is it connects two things together, right? It connects your phone to your headset. It might connect your phone to your car. So when you're talking on the phone, you get in, you start your car, automatically switches to the speakers and the microphone that's there. But it's just purely connectivity. Now, when iPhone came out, the iPhone 4S, if the specs would have been, well, we don't have Bluetooth, we have iTunes. And you can use iTunes to talk to iCar, and you have to buy your car from us, and you have to get iHeadset. People go, well, no, I don't want that, I want Bluetooth. Well, why is it that they want Bluetooth? Choice and connectivity. And that's the same thing with MTConnect, really. The reason why that end users want to have MTConnect is for choice and connectivity. The connectivity is just getting basic information off of a device. The choice is applications. People don't want to be locked into a particular vendor, and I'll get more into that. So MTConnect, it's a protocol. It's based on what the internet runs, which is really HTTP and XML. Free to join, free to deploy, open source. Just think of this as the Bluetooth or USB for manufacturing equipment and applications. And from a very high-level perspective, what MTConnect does, and I'll show you a graphic of this, is it basically turns a piece of manufacturing equipment so it looks like a secure website. And the really important aspect of MTConnect is that from a software perspective, is that it makes it brain dead easy for applications to get information from an MTConnect enabled device. So here's sort of the challenge if we had a shop with just 5 machine tools in it. And really, MTConnect is not just about machine tools, it's about manufacturing equipment, but I think people can sort of relate to pictures of big machine tools, so that's why I selected this. And let's say we have 5 applications, right? Just this is, no shop would be this small. I mean, or maybe there would, but this obviously is a very small shop. And now we want to connect the applications to the machine tools. We now have what's called the M² problem. And the M² problem means that we have 25 different connections there. Because if you look at application A, I have to have a unique device driver to talk to machine tool 1, for machine tool 2, 3, and so forth. When I go to application B, I have to have unique device drivers for that, because it's not like my buddies at application A, C, D, or E, they're not sharing anything, and it's different applications. So adding machine tools is expensive, adding applications is expensive, because you have this hornet's nest out there. And this is a fact of life, and this diagram is why we're only seeing such a tiny % of people that are doing step 1, which is just monitoring their shop. So how does MTConnect change things? Well, we have the same shop, 5 systems, 5 applications, but now with MTConnect, that's the common translation point. So you think of MTConnect almost like as a Rosetta Stone, if you will, where on one side you have an adapter that takes, for example, the Chinese up top, it converts it to MTConnect. All the applications speak MTConnect, so that means when I go out there on application A, I just have MTConnect, and I can talk to any of those devices. I don't have to have something that is specific for each device. I'm just speaking MTConnect. And that makes a huge, huge difference. One of my friends, Mike Odell, who's chief scientist at UNet, one of his phrases that I love is, scaling is always the problem. And I don't care what you're designing in life, when you go through and you're creating something, I tell this to my son who's getting his master's in computer science. He's designing a piece of software. Oh yeah, this will work out fine for 3 or 4 people. I said, okay, John, now let's pretend like it's 3 to 4 million. Does your software still work? Well, no, it wasn't. Then you didn't design it the right way, did you? So, able to design something for scale really makes a big difference. So, I'm going to get to a diagram here because I've talked about what MTConnect, what protocol it uses, but we're going to take a picture of how it works. Now, one of the things that's key about MTConnect is that you can literally demonstrate, we're going to do this in the next session, the workshop, but you can literally demonstrate it by typing this right into your browser. And well, that falls in the category, well, yeah, but who cares? The reason why this matters is because how easy you can get the data really matters in life. If it's hard to get the data, then it's hard to get it to an application to make decisions. So one of the things that I like to show is actually on my blog, and I got this from Amit Deshpande, who's probably in the technical session right now, but, oh, there's Amit, is you pull up Excel, standard version Excel. Microsoft doesn't know anything about MTConnect, obviously, in their products, but you can get the data from the web, you can type in a little string pointing to any machine tool, and you can pull that data in, you just hit import, you just hit one button, and it goes out, automatically fills in the headers, fills in the columns, and then you have MTConnect data, you can graph it, do whatever you want. Now, you would never use that as a monitoring program, right? But what it shows is how easy you can get the data, and that makes a big difference. So MTConnect is a read-only protocol. We read the information. So let's look at a picture. So here we have a client application on the right, and a client application, let's say it's something like a monitoring, where what you want to do is you're a small shop owner, and we have examples of this thanks to like Joel Neidig. There are iPhone and Android apps for MTConnect. So let's say that what you want to be able to do is know exactly what's going on with your shop any place on planet Earth. And you want to see data, you want to see cameras, what's going on there. So that would be an example of a client application we're monitoring. And then we have an MTConnect agent, and the agent talks to different machine tools, manufacturing equipment here. So let's look at this. So the agent is a piece of MTConnect software. In newer CNCs, that can just run right on the CNC, for example. It's very, very small code, runs on a variety of operating systems. On legacy systems, it could run on a black box, and there's a number of black boxes that are out there. The next session that's coming up, I believe, in this room, after we have our break, will be the MTConnect connectivity guide that John Turner and David McPhail are going to be leading. And they'll get into the specifics of how do you connect new machines, how do you connect older machines. Well, older machines, basically, you see you would have a black box. On one side, it might have some RS-232, 274 different connectors. The other side of this little size of a brick, you'd have some Ethernet connections to get information to the outside world. So there's lots of ways to get devices MTConnect enabled. So the agent basically converts it from whatever proprietary format into a common MTConnect format. And from the outside world, what really happens is that this machine tool now looks like a website. It looks like ESPN.com, it looks like WashingtonPost.com. And that's how you get information from that. So from the software side, we're speaking to it just like we're speaking to a website. The HTTP, that stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and that's just what you see in the browser, like you type it or you might see it up there on the left-hand side. XML is the language of the internet today, and probably a lot of you folks haven't heard of that. It stands for Extensible Markup Language. What's important about XML is that it's human readable, it's machine readable, and it's self-describing in terms of the data. And this is a really big deal. And I'll show an example of that a little bit later. So MTConnect really has very, very simple commands, and this is what allows us to scale. You know, you can do a probe that says, tell me about yourself. What components do you have? What are the physical characteristics of this piece of manufacturing equipment? Number one. Number two, well, what information can I get? What data items? Can you tell me that you're available? Can you give me what the z-axis is? Can you give me the coolant temperature? And then the other commands are, well, tell me what you're currently doing. Give me a sample of what you're doing. And different parameters there. And the fourth is asset, which is what we introduced in 1.2, which is tell me something about either a piece of hardware or software that's not directly connected to it, such as a cutting device. You know, how much time is left in this particular cutting tool that's there. And how you talk to it is very, very simply, same way you talk from your browser to any type website, where that would be example, mymachinetool.mycompany.com. The nice thing about this is all applications today know how to speak to websites, you know, unless they were written in a cave. And what we like to say about MTConnect is that it's elegant in its simplicity. Now, the most obvious application, in my opinion, and I guess a lot of folks' opinion rather, is monitoring. And you know, when I give these talks, almost 100% of the time, go through, give the talk, and someone will say, you know what? Why even monitor? I don't even understand why you should, you know, why does that even matter? And coming from the computer industry, you know, it always would surprise me, like, well, I don't know, how can you possibly make decisions on what you're doing if you don't have data? I mean, why, how, you know? And it's like, well, you walk down there, take a look, and I said, yeah, but just by looking, you don't necessarily know exactly what's going on. And one of the examples that I like to tell is I gave a talk with Stuart McMillan, who is president of Task Force TIPS. We were at Morisaki Innovation Days. I spoke first, and Stuart spoke second. You know, standing room only, really good crowd. And Stuart put up this photo of his shop, and he said, "Yeah, I was walking through one of my plants and took this picture. And there's this young machinist there, and I noticed that this work holding that it was taking, instead of a half a second, it was taking 30 seconds to close. So I walked up to him and said, no, I remember we bought that equipment. Well, I don't understand what's taking so long. Oh yeah, I brought it to my boss's attention. He said it's a pump, and when the pump goes, we'll take care of it. Okay. Stuart walks to the manager. So what's the deal? Oh yeah, it's a pump, and the pump goes, we'll take care of it. Okay, great. Then he goes to the plant manager, and now he's upset. He's like, I don't understand. You know, what's going on? How long has it been doing this? Well, 9 months. What's the problem? No, we think it's a pump. Get someone here tomorrow morning. I don't want to guess anything. Find out. The guy comes the next day, the guy to look at it. He looks at it right away and says, oh yeah, we see this all the time. Put in a $2 filter. And it went from 30 seconds to less than half a second again. And he grabbed all the management team, pulled them in the office and said, you know, I'm not mad that you guys cost me $15,000 at least because this was taking so long when I do the math on it. He goes, I'm mad about what the message was to this young machinist, which is, you're going to bring something to our attention, and instead of quantifying what's going on, you guys just pull an answer out of your rear. And the message to this young guy is, don't bring anything up in the future, because management isn't smart enough to quantify this stuff and to have the systems in place to really know what's going on. He goes, that's what upsets me. And they said, if we would have had MTConnect, I would have known as soon as I got over a second, because I would have had a variable set that said, listen, this thing should never go over 1 second, because it should always be less than a half a second. So it's these types of examples where having the data allows you to make decisions. So one of the questions I have is, do you know more about your car than your shop? I mean, with my Corvette, I can get data anytime. You see here in the red where, so it was winter months and I wasn't paying attention to the tire pressure. It wasn't like it was critical, it was run flat tires, but still, it was low. So, that just sort of came up one day. And I can drill down into anything on the car, and I can get it whenever I want. So the question of, why would I want to remotely monitor my shop? We have a session today about that, where we have a panel that's led by Mark Doyle, who I think I see sitting in the back. There in the middle, sorry. I knew I saw you someplace, Mark. And Mark has the folks on there. They're going to talk all about why you should monitor. And here's just some of the reasons. So I'm not going to steal Mark's thunder here on this, but you can see there's lots of reasons why you should monitor a shop. And there's, with MTConnect, there's individuals that are using this today. That's one of the questions. Well, are people are using this? Absolutely, they're using it. And you see some quotes here from GE Aviation, from Remley. You see from Curtis Wright, one of the champions from we have multiple champions here. But I always have to pick on Red Heitkamp because he picks on everyone else on planet Earth. So everyone wants to return the favor. So Red was one of the first champions of MTConnect, and the type person that when you have a conversation with him, he really opens your eyes to problems not only on large shops, but challenges that small shops have, and just challenges in general. And I remember at IMTS, 2010, this gentleman comes up to me from a company, goes, are you Dave Edstrom? I had my name tag on, Dave Edstrom, so I said, yes. And he goes, Red sent me to talk to you. Okay. And I thought, is this some, am I in trouble, or is this a goof, or what? He goes, Red said, I'm not selling anything more to Remley Engineering until I get MTConnect on my systems. Can you tell me what MTConnect does? And that's quite honestly what we're encouraging all customers to say, is to make sure that you also have MTConnect. Not instead of whatever protocol they have, but also, give customers choice. Give manufacturing shop owners choice. So we have assets in 1.2, and the way to think about asset is that it's something that's not associated with a machine tool all the time that can be removed. And this is really important because we're going to be showing some very cool demos between noon and 2 next door and 6 to 8 tonight, where you have different pieces of equipment that are sharing information, interconnectivity. And this is the first time it's been done with open standards, so it's really very, very compelling. And one of the things that we're doing with MTConnect that I think is just very cool is there's some standards that are out there, some ISO standards that are very good, but were never implemented. You got these rocket scientists at ISO that create the standards, but they never put it to use. And coming from Sun Microsystems, we're very pragmatic, and we would really build things from the ground up. Just to come up with something that no one ever used, and we never really sort of got that. But the nice thing about working with ISO and on some of the standards, like with MTConnect, is that we have embraced their 13399 standard. And that's the standard that describes how cutting tools are physically set up from an independent standpoint. So what this allows is for people to have a abstraction layer, and all that means is to be able to ask for something in a generic way of a certain type tool, and then to go out and get the tool that would meet that capability. So that this is a really big deal that we put this standard in place, and 1.2 is really going to open up a lot of very, very interesting solutions in manufacturing. When we talk to people about 1.2 and what things are going on, it really gets folks' imaginations going. So what is an MTConnect? Well, it's not an application. We run into that all the time where people go, yeah, I want to buy MTConnect. You know, Paul Warendorf likes to say that at IMTS, an Emerging Technology Center, people literally pulled out a credit card. You know, and it's okay, here, sounds good, I want to get it. Well, you know, it's an enabling technology. You want to talk to the people that have either the hardware that's enabled or the software that's enabled. You know, it's sometimes something that people have a challenge understanding. You know, MTConnect doesn't do calculations. MTConnect simply is taking the information that comes from a piece of equipment or another type of device and is making it easy to get. You know, it's the connection, if you will. It's the Bluetooth of manufacturing. Now, we make the source code available for free for members. We make the binaries available. They can then take that and they can do what they want with it. They can roll it into their hardware, they can roll it into their software, they can charge whatever they would like to do for that. And again, the reason that we do it is because we want to have that manufacturing plug and play. Now, we've talked about how easy it is to get applications to speak to an MTConnect enabled device because it's based on things like HTTP and XML. That's what really runs sort of the internet today, those standards. Now, how MTConnect differs from other attempts is that, and I'll show this graphically when I go through a story here, is that other attempts would take the application and you had to put, let's say that everyone in this room is a different piece of manufacturing equipment, and I'm an application, and I want to talk to all of you. Then what I would have to do prior to MTConnect is I would have to have the ability, or the device driver, to talk to Doug Woods, to go through to talk to Don Martin, to go through to talk to Damien. And I would have to have that code for each piece of equipment, because each piece of equipment speaks a different language. For every application I have, I would have to do that. So obviously that's not scalable. It's very hard for every application, and that's why we only see a tiny, tiny percent of systems monitored today. Well, now let's look at how it's different with MTConnect. With MTConnect is that we have an application here, but when I go to speak to Doug and I'm trying to figure out what is this, I send a probe to Doug, and the probe says, Doug, send me two categories of information about you. Doug sends back to me human readable information about, called components, the physical makeup of what Doug can do. The next thing that Doug sends to me are all the data items that I can read and I can get information about. Now, in addition to that, over here, there's this dictionary that we call a schema. And what's in that dictionary is if Doug sends me a value for the D axis or whatever, over here is a dictionary that literally says, this is an integer, it can have the values, all of this information. So I don't need to know really anything about Doug because Doug has the information that he's going to send to me, as well as over here I have this like master dictionary that describes everything. So now when I go out and speak to you guys, I can do a probe and I can very easily get that information. So now let's say that I'm talking to Don Martin and Don wants to add something, wants to add a sensor because that's what line position does. When I go out and do a probe, all of a sudden, boom, well, Don just put another sensor on that particular manufacturing equipment. I now know about that and I can do something with it. So it's a very different design from how it's traditionally done. But the important part about it is this is how you scale something. You know, you don't scale something by trying to keep all the smarts right here. How you scale something is you put the smarts at each device and then you let the application ask for the information. So I'll go through that in just a second. So here's just showing how a lot of people are starting to do things in the cloud, store information in the cloud, because you're getting this genealogy cradle to grave, where they want to be able to have everything about the device or about the part stored from the very beginning all the way through maybe until it gets recycled. So for example, let's say that you had a Corvette LS9 engine and all of a sudden you start blowing out oil rings. Well, it'd be nice to be able to go through and see all the machining of the pistons to go, you know what, is there anything in common here as opposed to doing a total recall of every LS9 engine out there? So we're seeing people, a lot of people doing more things in the cloud today. I know that iGear is doing that, and Scataware, for example. So I talked about before, Mark Albert's article, that really did make a big difference for MTConnect, and I think people saw that previously. So I know, and this is a first attempt, and if this doesn't work out, Doug Woods will certainly let me know that it didn't work out, as will everyone else who I know here. But folks have recommended that I read some of the different books about manufacturing. It seems like what some of the books have in common is they like to tell a story. Of course, I'm drawing a blank right now. What's the most famous one, Doug? Where it's the, what's it? What's that?
The goal.
The goal. The goal. And then the goal revisited, right? Isn't that the follow-on? So the goal has what, sold 3 million. So you're going through the, everyone says, okay, I'm going to come up with a story here, see if I can drive home a point. So if it doesn't work, you'll never see this again, although you might because it'll be on tape. So there's 2 families. There's one family, Polly, and think about who Polly would probably be. Think Orange County Choppers, and Paulina, supermodel. Think Port Sacopa. They have quadruplets: Paul, Peter, Pat, and Pontius. All right. Paul's the technical son. Peter's the creative son. Pat is the math-loving son. But Pat also wanted to be a male model, but he decided not to follow his mom's footsteps. Decided to stay in the family, the dad's footsteps, do some machining. Pontius is the 4th son. Pontius wanted to be a pilot initially, but decided to go back to machining. Some people will get that type of humor. So, Paul, Peter, and Pat create perfect precision parts, aka PPPP. Pontius creates his own called Pontius Passable Parts. Paulie says to his sons, boys, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. You need to monitor your shop floor. He then goes to Pontius. He says, just as I told your brothers, Pontius, what you cannot measure, what you cannot manage, what you cannot measure, you also need to monitor your shop floor. So they follow their son's steps, but they take different approaches. Perfect Precision, they really do their homework. They really dig into it. And they come to the very thoughtful conclusion that it's just not a matter of just picking at a dashboard, but how you get the data really matters for the short term and for the long term. They go with a company called Open Systems Shop Floor Monitoring. Now, Pontius takes a different approach. Pontius believes, you know what? It doesn't matter how you get the data. Just give me a dashboard. I don't care. Just a dashboard. It really doesn't matter to me at all in life. So Pontius selects Billy Bob's proprietary shop floor monitoring. So let's look at what happens with Pontius when he goes through Billy Bob's. Well, he's got the 5 machine tools, and he wants to add a part. He wants to add a machine tool. So he adds a machine tool up there. And Billy Bob says, not a problem, $10,000 to write adapter. Okay. Now he wants to integrate in with the ERP system. So then Billy Bob says, Pontius, okay, we can do it, but this is hard. It's going to be about 75 grand. It's going to be a lot of work. We're talking about months and months of effort. So then Billy Bob says, well, I don't get it. Why isn't it just more plug and play? And Pontius explains, well, that's because there's no standard. Now Billy Bob has a customer for life or until Pontius wises up. Now let's look at Perfect Precision production parts. They also have the 5 machine tools. They're using MTConnect. Open System Shop Floor Monitoring just works, easily connects all the machine tools. When they expand, their business is doubling every year. So they add 5 new machine tools. And they make sure that they're all MTConnect enabled. Even though they see that they speak different languages from the adapter to the agent. They go through, they find that the vendor charged $500 each, but they're more than happy to pay for that because they're getting information. They want to integrate their system with ERP, And the ERP vendor says, you know what, this is just brain dead easy. You know, this is just XML, this is not a problem. So what happens here with these two shops? Well, the Pontius, he spent the 10 grand, he spends the 75 grand, but really he's not getting the bang for the buck, very, very limited. He's never able to really improve, he goes out of business. Worse than that, he becomes homeless, and his parents don't even invite him for Thanksgiving because he chose a proprietary monitoring protocol. So I think this is really more than just about, this is a lifestyle choice, folks, from MTConnect. So let's look at having with perfect precision parts. They selected MTConnect. They get everything integrated. Their OEE is radically improved. Everything is put together here. Their business is doubling every year. They all drive new Corvettes. They marry triplets who are, interestingly enough, their first particle physicists, each of them, and they're supermodels. So they have happy lives. They're just going very well. So let's look at a picture of this developer. Now, which do you think is easier for developers? On the left, which is MTConnect, which is, you can see that when the developer gets information from MTConnect, it's literally like that, folks. It's human readable, and it comes with a dictionary. It tells you everything you need to know. Versus on the right, you're just going to get bits, and it's up to you to figure out what those bits are. That's what the proprietary protocol gives you. Whereas with MTConnect, it opens up a world of applications. It's all about data, easy access to data. You know, that's sort of the net of this conference. You know, if you're going to make improvements, you have to have easy access to data. We have lots of members here. We've already talked, this is the 4th release. We have a new website. Now on there, we have a paper that gets into monitoring many different companies. It really breaks things down. And thank you to the friends at CCAT and also the Army and I forget the other org. Was it Dean's org as well? A number of organizations worked on this. It's a great paper. It's out there for free at the site. We also have the Getting Started MTConnect, a connectivity guide, and I mentioned that's coming up. John and David are in the back there. They're going to be going through this. We're going to have 20 plus hours of videos from this conference, which will be a lot of information. So just sort of some highlights here. It's a proven technology, open and royalty-free, free to join, free to deploy. Remember, this is not an application. This is a protocol. This connects manufacturing equipment to applications. And the big difference is that we make it very, very scalable because the data, it's self-describing at MTConnect. You can think about it where an application reaches out. Just as the example I had with Doug, is it comes with a schema or a data dictionary, and that makes a huge difference. And just 4 words to remember: different devices, common connection, mtconnect.org. Thank you very much.